Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andi Ortiz. I am a reporter with TheWrap and co-host of the Unwrapped podcast, and welcome to TheWrap's next WGA Strike Roundtable. Late Night Writers Sound Off. These folks right here were some of the very first hit by the strike, which began almost 3 months ago now, and the fight for a fair contract continues. So today we're going to check in with them, get their insights on everything that's going on. We have some amazing late night writers with us today. I am fans of every single one of you. We have Joyce, a writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live. We have Joanna Rothkopf, who were last week tonight with John Oliver. We have Michael Pielocik for The Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon. Also from The Tonight Show, Natasha Vaynblat. And we have Gentile from Late Night with Seth Meyers. And last but not least, we have Sofia Manfredi last week tonight with John Oliver. Guys, I didn't take in enough oxygen. That is my fatal flaw in all of these. I never breathe enough before I do our intros. But thank you all for being here. We are so excited to talk to you. I normally start my interviews with just like a very sincere, how are you doing? It is a big group though. So Sofia, you are first on my screen. I will check in. Just how are you doing? We are very far into the strike at this point. How are you guys actually?
I'm okay. I'm chugging along in the strike. I think I feel a degree of uncertainty that I think everybody feels. A lot of trying to figure out what to do with from unstructured time other than picket, which is nice. Picketing's nice. You just sort of take little walks with your friends, which I think is a really good way. And also, of course, chant, etc. But there is a little walk aspect to it, which I really like. So yeah, I would say I am okay. And that's about as well as I can sum it up.
Listen, that's as well as we need you to sum it up. It's being okay. It's hard. It's hard to be like good right now, right? Because like you said, there is a lot of unstructured time. I want to start this discussion though. Jesse, I'll come to you because, we mentioned that late night writers, you guys were the first hit. You were the front line. It was strike authorized, strike vote. And then the next day, late night went dark. That means I assume you guys had a bit more time to prepare for things. I mean, you knew it was coming. There were talks happening. So did that make things harder? Did it make it easier to prep for it? Like just talk to me about being just that very first line of people that were hit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just in the month before or whatever, there was a lot of just discussion around the house. Like, no, don't, we're not fixing the kitchen now. What do you don't buy anything, stop, we can't, that kind of stuff. And just try to figure out what the hell we're going to do with our kids. Cause we were going to send them to summer camp and then we decided not to because of the money and everything like that. And then, it was weird that day, I mean, everybody was everybody was on our side, which was cool. But all the lighting guys and the camera, they're all kind of just feeling around us, just hey, so what do you guys, what are you thinking? It's I have no fucking idea. I don't none of us do, we were all kind of just hey, look, sorry, I don't know how this is gonna, and it was just really as soon as the show finished taping that night, we all kind of were well, see you tomorrow or in 150 days. It was that kind of vibe. So we just had no idea. So
that feels very stressful to me. I can only imagine going through it. Natasha, I want to come to you. I mean, being some of the first hit, now you guys have also been feeling the impact the longest, and you had to make those decisions. Like Jesse was saying, you have to decide without a lot of information. You have to decide, can we do this? Should we do this? What is kind of the feeling now that we're so far into it? Is the impact, I have to imagine it's increased at this point, right? Because you guys have been out of work and you still need to figure things out. So just what is the feeling for you right at this point right now?
I'm bored. Yeah, I would say big time bored, which is, I don't know, probably not the most PC or the politically right thing to say, but yeah, I'm freaking bored. I don't even read the news anymore at this point because I did it for my job. So I think the snow day feeling that I had maybe the first month has absolutely worn off as well. And I think now maybe the assumption is if the actors strike, we'll return sooner, but it's still pretty much up in the air. So I think I'm just feeling the strain of a lot of unstructured time.
You guys are doing, visually, I was going to say viscerally, it wasn't the right word. Visually, you seem like you're doing okay. It seems like you're holding it together. So I applaud you for that much.
Look how gray my beard thing is. I don't like, what are you talking about? So this is like a rally beard for the strike. I don't,
A rally beard. Ooh, I like that idea. A rally beard. That's fun.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, and something that's come up now a couple times, Michael, I'll come to you, is you guys have time to fill. I know some late night writers, you guys are finding gigs in comedy. You're going back to comedy, like stand-up roots. But how are you filling your time at this point? How are you kind of providing? Because that's something that like you have to do. You have to worry about. You have to figure out how you're just going to get through day to day with families and whatnot. How are you finding ways to do that?
Yeah, I think that the way Natasha described it was that like snow day feeling for a little while was really apt, and that like now it's kind of like, oh, okay, this is lasting for a long time, and figuring out. I mean, it's been really nice, like Sofia was saying, to pick it and feel the solidarity when you're out there, and kind of talk to people that you've worked on other shows with, and that catch up feeling and all that stuff, and then meeting new people and all that stuff is all great and very like you feel like you're kind of a part of something, and you feel like you're putting the pressure on the studios and all that stuff. So that's been a really good way to fill time. Besides that, I've just been kind of doing the thing that you do also when you're like between jobs in this business, where you're like, well, this will end at some point, and so I'm gonna just stress about it a little bit, and also try to use the time to be like, oh, I have more time to spend with my kids, and kind of do that house project that has been sitting on the list and stuff. So it's a constant mental gymnastics to not freak out. Is that a normal way to say that? But yeah, it's like kind of just it's going to end at some point, and trying to figure out how to kind of fill the time and keep the pressure on and keep yourself busy has been a full-time job in itself.
I can imagine. So Joanna, I want to come to you because what Michael just said, you know that it's going to end at some point, right? You don't know when though. There seems to still be a lot of resolve though. You guys are fighting for a fair contract and there's no kind of budging. Everyone is very much like you guys are unified. You know what you want. Is that kind of the feeling? Is there that solidarity there? Is the resolve still as strong as when you guys started? What is kind of the feeling when you're out picketing, when you're having these conversations? What is the feeling there?
I think the resolve is strong as ever. I'm in kind of a weird situation because I was on maternity leave, and my maternity leave was set to end 2 weeks after the strike began. So I haven't worked in 40 years. I don't even remember what it's like. But I do. So it's like a kind of a weird mindset that I'm in, but I do feel like we're fighting to either return to a job that's the same or better someday, or I fear we won't have any job to return to. Like ending the strike doesn't really feel, or I won't have any career to return to. And I feel like people feel the same way. So it's like we're fighting for kind of something that's unclear. Someday something will happen, or trying to envision an industry that like all but collapses underneath us. And I've had kind of the also weird experience of leaving digital media, which also collapsed as soon as I was there, and then being like, oh, I'm going to TV, everything's great there. And then seeing that collapse beneath me. And at this point, I really am like, where would I go after this? And luckily, I'm in, this is not the question you asked. Luckily, I'm in like a very supportive therapy relationship, and I am on a new dose of Wellbutrin thanks to the strike. And I do feel like that is helping like word me for the next 100 days.
Good. Joanna, you don't know this about me. I'm a big therapy advocate. I just started therapy myself a couple months ago. I talk about this in like I somehow managed to work it into everything that I moderate and host.
I didn't know that about you, but
yes,
I need to know it now.
Therapy, man, it works. It is the place to be. I'm amazed though. I didn't realize you were on maternity leave. So that goes back to kind of the prep thing. When you're on maternity leave, you're now dealing with baby coming, and then also just sort of watching like strike preparations happen? Is that how that went? You just sort of had to spend your time off watching and waiting and just seeing how things were going to go?
Yeah, because I was trying not to be on our work Slack at all, but I would, because I was bonding with my infant, but then I would like peek in and see kind of like very frantic things being discussed. Yeah, so it's complicated.
Good Lord. I suppose that I should ask my first question to you. How are you actually? Are you good? Are you good?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yes, thanks to my sturdy regimen of antipsychotics and the love of my baby. I'm fine. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I feel like I put you on the spot on that one. Well, Sal, I'll come to you then, because Michael also mentioned kind of the solidarity that you're feeling, obviously from other writers. But in the case of late night writers, I mean, you guys had the solidarity from your hosts. I know specifically for Seth Meyers, he spoke about it before the strike even happened. He warned viewers what was about to happen. He said, listen, this is what they're fighting for. I fully support them. I would love to know, just, I mean, it's probably self-explanatory that it felt good, but I mean, just on like a deeper level, how does it feel knowing that you have the support of your host? Because he's obviously the face of the show. He can kind of lend some voice to what's happening. What was that experience like?
It was incredible. First, as an aside, let me just put in an endorsement for therapy and antidepressants as well, because I've been doing it for years. So I feel like, if anything, this is my World Series. I've been taking batting practice for like 10 years. And I'm now like doing it talking about this with my therapist now is like, it's just like taking batting practice. I'm like, oh, great, more fastballs to hit. But in terms of support, so I have support from a therapist as well. In addition to that, support from a host is incredible. I was in the studio on that last day for the taping of our show before the strike. And we obviously didn't know what was going to happen. There was a lot of uncertainty in the air. And I only knew that Seth was going to say something because it was in the rundown. But I didn't know what he was going to say, because he was just going to speak from the heart. And it was right before my segment, A Closer Look. So I was just sitting there waiting for my segment to start. And I just felt myself getting very emotional, because it's the camaraderie is very special that writers have in general. I felt like it was emblematic of the same feeling we have on the picket line when we all see each other, the solidarity and camaraderie, and the feeling that even extends all the way up to the hosts, that they still feel, because they all came from cast ensembles, stand-up. They were writers. In Seth's case, he was a writer. He still identifies himself as a writer, as he said in his message on the show. And so the fact that the feeling of support and community extends to them as well is an incredible morale boost. And so, it also kind of hit home for me something, which is that I feel really strongly about what we're fighting for, because I love my job so much and I love the people I work with. And that is even more motivation, because I want to fight to protect it. I want to make sure somebody else can have a job like this after me, and that other people in this industry have access to the same kinds of opportunities. And I don't know. So I didn't know what he was going to say. And when he was saying it, I felt really proud. And I definitely think that support has helped sustain us, because, if we were in a world where we didn't know necessarily if our shows were okay with this, it would definitely be more nerve-wracking. But knowing that they're fully behind us, that they have been to the picket lines as well, that Seth's been on the picket line, is just an incredible morale boost.
Well, and I'm curious, I mean, and for anyone who feels comfortable, without getting into specifics, I'm not asking you to air out private conversations you had, but I am curious at this point, have there been conversations since, right? Because obviously leading up to it, you talk to your host about what's going to happen, and your host talks to their viewers and whatnot. Has there been kind of constant communication since, constant, do you feel that constant support from your host? Have there been ongoing talks and support, I guess? I just asked that question, I think, 3 times in 3 different ways. So hopefully it got through.
What do you mean by that? No, I'm kidding. You asked the same question.
Right, I was like,
times.
I don't have a 4th, I promise.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, Jimmy's been picketing with us a bunch of times. So, and we talk about it, and he's a very supportive guy of the whole thing. And, he's been taking care of the staff and, everything like that. And like every now and again, we'll see like one of the like, camera guys will just drive by and honk at us, and that kind of thing, and then pull over and just go like, hey, you guys doing, like, so it's nice to know that like they're not mad at us, you know what I mean? Like the crew and stuff like that. And, so we still have this kind of interesting and we're very grateful for like that amount of support from just like everybody. The other day on the pickets line, some teacher came up to us. It was like, I've been on strike like a bunch of times over my career, like a retired teacher. And, she was like, I totally support what you guys are doing. And, like just whatever, just like pipe fitters and, just union people that you wouldn't necessarily think that you would like have a lot of camaraderie with a bunch of, like liberal Hollywood snowflakes or whatever. Like they're all very like everybody, like, Teamsters are driving by and honking at us, and it's just great. And, like, and so like from the top down, like, from, just everybody, it seems like is on our side.
Well, Natasha, I want to come to you again, because one thing that I have heard as I've done my reading on this, we've been covering it extensively on TheWrap as well, is it seems like there are people who, like Jesse was saying, that there are people who are not Hollywood folks who maybe aren't in the industry, who are now, because of the strike, realizing like, oh, late night hosts have like a whole team of people behind them. There is writers out the wazoo doing all of these incredible segments. Have you felt that? Has it felt like it has drawn kind of more attention to the incredible work that all of you guys do?
Yeah, I think so. And I think especially not even just the writers, but kind of like Jesse was saying, the like full support staff. I think it's been really cool to see people realize how many people make, one episode of a late night show, from the crew to even just the audience coordinators. And it's been also so nice to see them on the picket lines as well, especially because our choice to strike, very much affected their work in a way that they didn't, necessarily sign up for. So that has been incredibly powerful too, to see everyone else's support who wasn't even necessarily initially the one making the choice to strike.
Absolutely. Sofia, I want to ask you, because with working on, last week's night with John Oliver, one thing that he does, and I mean, all of these hosts do very well, is covering these newsy topics, right? Like you stay in the news and you bring it to people in a light way. You kind of make it palatable for people. And John Oliver obviously exceeds at that. Does it feel now like, being off the air, obviously it's for good reasons, and you guys are fighting for this contract, does it feel like there are things that you guys would like to be talking about that now you can't, because you guys aren't on the air, because you are out fighting to be able to do your jobs? Like, does it feel like there are things happening that you would like to be covering and being like, oh, I wish we could?
Yes. And I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the strike. Like, I'm like, oh, I would love to do a last week night episode about the strike and just talk to all these people and like do a primer on everything that's going on. I think it'd be really fun. But yeah, I think there are two sides of it. There are some things that I see in the news where I think that would be a great episode. That would be a great part of an episode. And there are some things I see in the news, and maybe I should admit this, where I'm like, oh, thank God. I really would love to just have let that one gone by, and I did. But mostly the first one, I would say.
Listen, that's fair. There are things that happen that you're like, oh, do we have to?
I mean, yeah, like Trump getting arrested, like all this stuff, like, George Santos, like getting indicted. Like, there's just so much stuff that is like so frustrating that just like, whatever, like that we can't put context for DeSantis. So like everybody's aunts doesn't fall in love with him, like that kind of shit, like that we can't, and just whatever. But like, Mike Lindell made his dumb web series public, like to try to like raise stock prices for it. Like, I don't know. The guy, the Dallas QAnon cult dude, died. That guy, he died in a dirt bike accident. Like, it's the best. Like, anyway, the fact that we can't, like, it's very frustrating.
I feel like it's not so much like, oh, people need the voice of late night, but it's more like a way to participate and talk about it with people who are also caring about it and think it's funny and things like that. And I don't want to say a community because that's such a stupid word, but you know what I mean? And meanwhile, during the strike, also like Twitter has become unusable, which I also feel like would be funny to talk about. But so it's like, well, what are we supposed to do to participate in a funny news event, like call a friend. There's like no.
That's a very good point. What Joanna's saying, that like it also just being able to write on a late night show like makes you feel just kind of like less impotent about the world. You know what I mean? Like Ted Cruz does some shitty thing, and then I can write a joke and make fun of him, and then I see it ripple, and I see Ted Cruz get mad at it, and it makes me feel like, oh great, like at least I pissed off Ted Cruz today. You know what I mean? Like something you have some outlet for it, and then yeah, it's very frustrating that you don't have that now, or at least I don't. Yeah.
I hope you have like a t-shirt somewhere that says that at least I pissed off Ted Cruz today. That feels like something I would, that feels like a fun thing.
Yeah, it is a very fun thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, Joanna, another thing you said that I want to hone in on is kind of the changing of Twitter. It's one of those things that maybe you wouldn't expect to be a big factor, but in the way that it is changing, has it hindered kind of how you guys are communicating, getting the word out? Because I know for a while, if it was like, if you went to type hashtag WGA strike, it like wouldn't auto-populate. It was like a weird thing that was happening. But does it feel like it has kind of hamstringed at all the means of communicating the message, the means of communicating with, fellow people on strike? Has that impacted you guys?
I personally am maybe not the best person to answer that because I'm not in charge of communicating. I think that's something that the WGA does very well, and like captains and maybe some panelists here do. But I'm basically just seeing it where I go. So it's a lot of text threads and a lot of Instagram and communications from the guild directly. So I feel like that, Twitter, I think, had been a long phase out, kind of like a long, slow phase out from my consumption personally. So I haven't like abruptly noticed it. But I'm not really sure how the rest of the world is getting the information. I know there's like, it's been in the news and a lot of people wrote op-eds. So I've seen that kind of like proliferating that way.
Right. Okay. I just it didn't even occur to me until you mentioned Twitter changing that, like, yeah, that thing is really, really, I guess we'll say evolving. That's a nice kind of, yeah. Well, Michael, I want to come to you because I feel like I'm putting Joanna on the spot, but it's another thing that Joanna said where she mentioned that she's not sure what you guys are coming back to. Like when this strike eventually ends, it's unclear. Hopefully it'll be the same as or better, ideally better when you come back. But one thing that I've seen one negotiating committee member has said that late night writers specifically face oblivion. The word he used was oblivion if a fair contract doesn't come through. Is that accurate? That's a very strong word. Is that an accurate kind of sentiment?
Yeah, I think that is accurate. I mean, you look at the protections that we have, on linear TV and then versus streaming, and how, I'm talking specifically about late night at this point, but, residuals and kind of the way that they, like the contract lengths and minimums and that kind of stuff, all goes away tomorrow if, the network that your show is on decides that your show works better on their streaming service. And then the way that you kind of make a middle class life out of this job goes away, and then you're just eking out what you can, and it's kind of more gig to gig and more like contract to contract and all that stuff. So I do think that that's an accurate kind of assessment. It's funny because late night shows are actually, these like network late night shows and these cable late night shows are kind of feel like they're one of the last kind of reliable jobs. Not to say that they're always the most reliable, but like they are. You kind of talk to all these other writers on the picket line, and you realize like, oh, I'm really lucky to be where I am in terms of these more reliable, like I can plan a life out jobs, whereas scripted writers are kind of like moving from mini room to mini room, or 13-week contract and then 3 months off, and then trying to figure out what the next thing is and all that stuff. So, and it shouldn't be that way. Late night shouldn't be the last bastion of like kind of maintaining this reliable middle class kind of existence in the writing career, but it is. And I think that we want to keep it that way, and also hopefully extend it to every writing job, that kind of thing. So I think that is kind of a very accurate way to describe. You want to make sure that you're going back to the career pathway that we had before, and that it's just as good, if not better, for late night writers and for every writer, I think.
I want to come to you as well because with Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, that's another network where they have this streaming service that is ready to go. And does it feel the same way for you? Does it feel like in a possible oblivion is a potential outcome here because it could end up going to streaming at some point, or going entirely to streaming, I should say?
Yeah, I definitely, that's a fear that I have. I don't have any kind of really inside, I don't have any real sense of how HBO thinks of it versus how HBO Max kind of plans out, what they're going to put where. But sort of in the abstract, it's definitely something that I worry about because, like Michael was saying, there's all these things that have been so set in stone that are so reliable that, people previously went on strike for that they really agreed upon protection. But just, it is kind of a crazy, just black and white in terms of, you have to have them or you don't. And I used to, before Last Week Tonight, I wrote for Pielocik, which was only streaming on Netflix. And even between the two, I was like, oh, that there's a difference here in kind of what the structure is for the writers. And so, yeah, I definitely am worried about a world where we are no longer on TV and only on streaming. And yeah, everything just sort of, it seems like, melts away at that point. So that's definitely something that I think about and worry about.
I feel bad. I'm sitting here what are your guys' deepest fears about everything that's going on? Please tell me. But I mean, this is why we have these conversations, because people need to know what the fears are. Sal, I'll come to you. I mean, at this point, I'm not going to say what's your biggest fear because that's just too big of a question. But I mean, at this point in the strike, what has been kind of the hardest thing to grapple with? Obviously, you're trying to figure out your personal life and professional life at the same time. But what's been kind of the biggest hurdle, the biggest struggle that you've been facing?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll just say whether you asked us about it or not, we'd all be constantly consumed by our worst fears. I mean, we're all just comedy writers, so we're constantly. Comedy is just a way we compensate for being terrified all the time. I feel the uncertainty the same way everybody else does. I will say just to my biggest fear is the same as what everybody else has articulated. And so I just want to repeat what they said, because I often find I think probably a misconception a lot of people have, or maybe something they don't fully understand just consuming this news from the outside, is the huge difference between traditional linear television and streaming. Because most people will just ask, what exactly is this strike about? I don't fully understand what has changed in the industry. And the simple fact is just, if you take the exact same show, take our show, for example, if you take that exact same show, a show that you love on regular television, and you put it on streaming and it has the same number of viewers, or you write a hit show for linear television, the same number of people watch it on streaming, you would benefit from it financially in one way on traditional television that you wouldn't on streaming at all. They've just completely stripped away all of those protections. It's just that simple. And so the fear absolutely is that the streaming is the future for everything. So they could take all of these shows and put them on streaming, and nobody would be able to have a livable career. I think that's everybody's foremost fear, whether you're a late night writer or not. I mean, in particular for us, like Michael said, we're very fortunate to have this reliable gig. We have all of these protections that have been collectively bargained for over the past many years that we're the beneficiaries of. And that will all go away once it's on streaming. And it has already for so many other writers who write for shows that are exclusively on streaming. And you hear all of these stories that I think if regular people, once reasonable people outside the entertainment industry hear them, they all say, yeah, I completely understand, because you'll hear about a hit show that gets millions upon millions of viewers. But if all of those viewers are on streaming, they don't benefit from it in any way, unlike how they would on television, because we have a profit sharing model that we've collectively bargained for. We're trying to protect it, and that will all go away, just like it has for many other industries before us. They're trying to, as has been said many times in the course of this strike, they're trying to turn this job into just a gig job like Uber or anything else. And they'll do it to other jobs after us too, if they succeed with us and they succeed with transportation and anything else. So that's the biggest fear that you constantly live with, I think, as a writer. No matter what gig you end up getting, that it'll just be completely unsustainable and you won't be able to do this for a living anymore.
I think that's a thing that I'm learning just today is I didn't realize how steady of a gig. I mean, like you know on kind of like a service level, but I didn't realize that it is that reliable of a gig. It is the show that you guys are producing. In some of your cases, only weekly, but in a lot of your cases, it's an every single night kind of show. It's a very interesting way to look at it, and I hadn't considered that. I apologize for not having considered that. But again, this is why we have these conversations. Jesse, I want to ask you. I want to choke again first. I'm so sorry, you guys. I don't understand why it's happening today. Jesse, I want to ask you. I don't know what your experience was with the writer strike that happened previously in 2007 and 2008, but I would be curious. I mean, one thing we're kind of asking everyone across the board is just how does this one compare at this point? Because I believe I think we might have surpassed the strike of 2007, 2008 in terms of length at this point. But how does it compare to the last time that this happened?
Are you just asking me that because I have gray in my beard that I pointed out earlier?
Yes, exactly because you have a rally beard.
Because I actually was not a professional writer at that point. I was doing stand-up in 2007-8. So, but I know a lot of the guys who were. I had this strike in 2013 just against the Comedy Central writers versus Viacom. It was like a little mini strike, right? So, I mean, I lived through that. But I don't know, just from having read it and being a history dork and whatever else, like, you know, it does seem like this is very different because this time we have like a lot of support. You know, like the last time it struck me as it was kind of like, the writers are being pains in the ass kind of a thing. And like I said, this one, it's like, you know, teachers and Teamsters and pipe fitters and whoever else, like everybody is like, seems like they're behind us. And I think it's because there is a very digestible, identifiable bad guy in this fight, you know, where it's like, you know, Jeff Bezos is the bad guy. like it seems like everybody in America kind of get behind like, oh yeah, these guys who like make $200 billion, like that doesn't, yeah, I'm a plumber, but I can see how that's unfair, you know, like that kind of thing. Like, so I think that it's just easier to wrap your head around why people wouldn't necessarily feel like Apple needs more money, you know, like that kind of thing, you know? So it feels nice to have so much kind of general goodwill and support from everybody, you know?
Yeah, I have to imagine that helps morale, especially out on the picket lines, because that's a very visual representation when you see everybody out there and you kind of see all the masses.
And I know a guy who got hit by a car last time, right? Like he got his foot run over by somebody who was like angrily trying to get into the studio. So like, and like none of that's happening this time around, you know? So yeah,
good
that seems, it's shocking to hear at first.
I would be curious for each of you kind of just for that most memorable moment of this strike, of being out picketing. I imagine at this point there are a lot. I imagine because, I mean, at least for me, pandemic times, like time hasn't been a real thing. I haven't known what day it is in about 3 years. So I imagine everything is starting to blur together a little bit. But Natasha, I'll start with you. I mean, do you have kind of one moment or one story that you remember from these past weeks that like has really, really stuck with you about this strike?
I mean, there's a few. I will say it felt maybe like the most kind of visceral moment was where we were picketing outside of the Disney upfronts on the Hudson River, I guess, and that was clear. It was just people gathering to promote their shows to advertisers, you know, to be like, look at all this amazing content we have coming, you know, and all these advertisers there thinking about, you know, where they want to spend their money. And we were picketing outside, and I was like, it's just so surreal to me that the people in the building are not acknowledging that the reason that they have this opportunity to advertise is because we have written great content that they can use. And it was just so odd. We're like standing there, you know, with our signs, and they're coming out and like in their fancy outfits, popping into their Ubers, just kind of not acknowledging us. And that just made me mad. But also just, you know, like excited to be a part of a group that was actively protesting what is happening right in front of us. And then there was another picket where Tony Kushner just, you know, it was so smart, you know, and cursed up a storm. And it was just cool to be like, yeah, he's also part of the Writers Guild, you know. I mean, I think the first one, like the kind of the day it happened and everyone went, and like that kind of struck me as the most overwhelming in a good way, where it was just kind of the sheer amount of people that were there, and there was so much energy, and there was so much kind of like now you're used to seeing people on the picket line or people that you were friends with before, have made friends with since, and there's kind of like an established social thing there. But the first day where it was like, I don't know, everybody was just meeting with people and talking to people and excited to be there and asking each other things, and like, I don't know, I don't know, everyone, it was the first time I had held a tambourine personally in like 20 years probably. Like a lot of it was just really new and exciting. And I don't mean to say this in a way where I'm saying, the energy was so much better at the beginning. Like, that's not what I mean at all. I feel like that energy is still there at all the pickets, but the first day was the first time I had experienced it in person. So that is kind of the day that sticks out to me.
That's something I think about a lot, though, is I've never been on strike myself. That must be such an interesting feeling going on, like just being on strike, being around those people and being around that sheer volume of people. It feels like to me, social situations in general are overwhelming, but that seems like it is a very specific energy that you probably would have experienced. Am I right?
Yeah, and I'd not been on strike before, and so it was just kind of, it was really specific, and it's, people honking is always very fun. I love when people honk, like a U-Haul driver going past, like holding up his union card, just like a lot of solidarity that again has been maintained, and I have felt that every picket I've done, but the novelty was very exciting.
I do want to take a moment to say that your signs, all of your signs, have just been like, that's the beauty of writers, is these signs are all excellent. I know that's not really an important thing in the grand scheme of things, but I just wanted to get it out there. You guys are very clever and funny. You're very good at your jobs. Michael, I'll ask you: is there any moment that stands out for you as we're almost 3 months in at this point?
It's been cool talking to my kids about it, and like, why is dad home all the time? Kind of stuff. That's been, and giving them the reason. And there was one picket. I came home from picketing at Warner Brothers over at Hudson Yards or something, and it was one of those days where a lot of people came out, and it was big. And I said to my daughter, who's 10, I was like, "Oh, it was really cool picketing today. Oh, there were like a lot of celebrities there. Like Lin-Manuel Miranda was there, and he was handing out donuts." And she was like, "Did you take a donut?" And I was like, "No, I didn't really feel like a donut at the time." I said, "Thank you." But and she was like, "What the hell?" Like, she was so mad. And she still will not let me live down the fact that I did not take a donut from Lin-Manuel Miranda. So she's like, "Oh, dad's too good, I guess, like for a donut from Lin-Manuel." So, but it's been fun to talk to them about it and to kind of let them know, why we're doing this and what we're fighting for. It's been fun.
Well, and that's one thing I've been curious about as well, because obviously you're not the only writer with kids who are old enough to understand, or at least on some level, maybe not the full extent of it, because it obviously is nuanced and layered. But how do you explain it to your young kids? I mean, how do you kind of make them see what's happening without getting too into the weeds? Like, how do you go about that?
Just a lot of anti-capitalist screeds, a lot of yelling. No, just it kind of like, I mean, it's funny because it's not actually that complicated to explain. Like, they get it. They get like, oh yeah, you're doing a job and you should get compensated for that job. And the reason that I want Jesse's kids to be able to go to camp. Like the reason that we are able, anytime. The reason that we're able to, kind of like have a place to live and stuff like that is because we can have a job where you're compensated for your work, and they understand this pretty intrinsically. So like, it hasn't been that, I haven't gotten into like residual pay structure with them too much, but they get it. I think they get it pretty clearly.
Very cool.
Do they recognize the green envelopes?
He's in a good mood. He got some green envelopes.
Daddy's getting 80 cents.
Yeah. My 5-year-old, he's now 6 as of yesterday, but when he was a couple weeks ago, he was 5, and they just understand, like, we got to kind of buckle down right now, because they don't really get, but my son had a wiggly tooth, and he said, "I hope I lose it while Dad's on strike so that the tooth fairy will pay us." That's what he said, which is like the most adorable thing I've ever. And then also it's just like, motherfucker, I'm the tooth fairy. Like I gotta give you money during the strike. Like, what do you? So, anyway, but it was like super sweet and cute. So they're like trying. They don't. Yeah.
I want to cry from how cute that is. I was not prepared for that kind of emotion on this Tuesday morning.
Yeah, it was really adorable.
That's when you tell them, listen, Tooth Fairy's on strike too. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the Tooth Fairy will not cross a picket line. So.
Tooth Fairy won't be crossing the picket. Well, and I messed up at one point. I moderated a few of these conversations that we had, and I moderated our Moms on Strike one. And I asked one of our lovely panelists how she was explaining it to her kid, and she's like, well, my kid is only like a couple months old, so I'm not. And I was like, well, that's embarrassing. So Joanna, I'm hoping that your baby, maybe first word like fair contract, maybe. I don't know how old your baby is at this point of its speaking age, but maybe fair contract, first words, that feels like an attainable goal, I think.
Yeah, he's 8 months old. His first word has already been scab.
Great.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, but I was at one picket and I brought him because I was like, this is history, whatever. He wants to see himself there. And I took my husband, who's a film producer, so he was all uncomfortable. He was the enemy. And it was interesting. It was like 1,000 degrees. It was like a horrible day, but it was interesting and cool to be like, why is my stupid little family at the middle of this like nationwide labor dispute? Yeah, it's like, it's cool. So I hope he is able, when he's conscious and has language, to feel a connection to what will hopefully be a hard-won victory.
Absolutely.
For me,
just so clear,
have a career.
Did you say that his first word? Did you joke that his first word was stab or scab?
Scab.
Okay, I thought you said stab, and that's why that face happened. Because I was like, should we be concerned for what's happening in your house with this off time?
No.
I'm just apparently a little bit deaf. And then Sal, we're getting closer to time here, so I'll have you finish out. What is kind of the moment that has stood out to you, the most visceral, the most memorable, the most maybe hopeful moment? I mean, what has it been for you?
Well, I'm slightly envious of the parents here who have kids who are old enough to understand, because my son is 3, so he has no conception of. I tried explaining what a job is to him, because every time he like asks or something, I have to say, well, or like if I have to go somewhere, or my wife has to go somewhere. Even before this, we would say like, "Oh, Daddy has to work." He'd be like, "Why?" And I would say, "Work is a job where you get money." He'd be like, "You need money to do things," and he would say, "Why?" And I'd be like, I'm on your side, man. I don't think it's necessary. I don't know why. I don't have the answer to why. Like, I think the why is bad. Jobs suck, dude. But so like, he doesn't get it. My wife, I was very fortunate. I guess this is an answer to what was memorable, because I got the WGA here in the first few weeks, did a rally at TheWrap, and they asked me to just say a few words there. And the cool thing, the memorable thing was, like Jesse said before, seeing all the solidarity and all the signs from a bunch of other unions that were in the crowd. It was, there were teachers unions and nurses and pipe fitters, like Jesse was saying, and which, as a side note, as a comedy writer, is incredibly cool to feel like, yeah, I'm like a pipe fitter. I have a useful skill, just like all those other guys. But like, so that was very memorable to be able to see not just the entertainment industry unions there, but so many other people who were there with us and cheering along with us. But yeah, my 3-year-old, the only thing that registers with him is the honking trucks. Like, now I get why he's so thrilled by trucks. I'm like, yeah, every time a truck honks, it's like the best thing that happens on the picket line. We all turned into 3-year-olds. Wow. We're like, whoa, my God, he's blowing his horn.
I love that a lot. And also, just on behalf of children everywhere, I'd like to thank you for making it very clear that being an adult sucks. Like, the world is expensive and it is hard. And because everyone in my life made it sound so fun, and then I got here and I was like, this is awful.
They have a beautiful innate skepticism of capitalism. They're like, I don't get this system. It's so manipulative and exploitive and dumb. And I'm like, yeah, man, I wish there was a Bluey episode about it to explain it to you.
Listen, maybe someday. But guys, unfortunately, that is our time. But thank you so much for taking the time today. I've so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for letting me be your moderator. I'm so sorry that I choked so many times, but listen, it happens. Thank you to all our panelists, and thank you to our audience who has tuned in. You can continue staying up to date on all news regarding the strike over at TheWrap.com. We also encourage you to check out our Wrap Pro membership hub, which is focused on serving professionals in the entertainment space. And be sure to save the date, October 4th, for this year's Grill Wrap Pros annual conference focused on the convergence of entertainment, media, and technology. Hopefully, the strike will have ended by then, but these people have had incredible insights. They will have more incredible insights when you're there. More details will be announced soon. Thank you so much, everybody.